Hello, this is Nancy FLinchbaugh with spiritualseedlings.com. I am an author of several books, including Revelation in the Cave, Revelation at the Labyrinth, Letters from the Earth, and Awakening, a contemplative primer on learning to sit. Today I'm going to teach you how to make a living vine finger labyrinth. This is a replica of the First Baptist Church, Springfield, cloth labyrinth that some friends and I made several years ago. For more on labyrinths, read my books. My book, Awakening, a contemplative primer on learning to sit, includes a chapter on labyrinths. It also has a story of the living vine labyrinth and a description of my use of the living vine finger labyrinth as I was writing the conclusion to my book. Also, I've written a novel based on the living vine labyrinth. If you read this book, you can join the magnificent and marvelous book club, the Mams, on an adventure as they launch a re-entry organic farm for women in recovery. Here, the ancient pilgrim path of the labyrinth leads them all through personal healing and redemption while finding hope for the planet. It's a great story. Now, the slab pies that you need will be a 12-inch square canvas, the labyrinth pattern, which I recommend the Santa Rosa labyrinth, which you can Google on the internet. Newspaper strips or lightweight paper, which you can cut into 1-inch by 3-inch strips. Modge Podge diluted with water, 2 parts water to 1 part Modge Podge, and a half a cup Modge Podge with 1 cup of water will probably be adequate. Gel medium matte, paint brushes, and you want to make sure you have a very fine paintbrush as well as a wide paintbrush, scissors and glue, and acrylic paints. You can mix some of these paints, or the colors you'll need are white, purple, dark and light blue, green, gold, orange, and red. And then finally you'll need some cotton clothesline or thick twine. If you get the twine, I would recommend 4-ply. For the first session, we'll create the labyrinth, and the second session, we'll paint the labyrinth. Okay, so first of all, you want to glue the labyrinth to the canvas. And like I said, if you can search the web for the Santa Rosa labyrinth pattern, Google Images will pull it up. And I want to mention that this labyrinth was designed by Leah Good Harris, who lives in Santa Rosa, California. And it's actually a copyrighted labyrinth. And so she asked if you're using it for commercial uses to contact her and give her a percentage. Look at creativelabyrinths.com for more information. Okay, you want to print out an image of it that's 12 inches by 12 inches. You can print it out in pieces and then glue them together. Microsoft Publisher will do this for you automatically. It's called tiling. Cut around the circumference of the labyrinth and then paste it on the canvas, making sure to piece it together and cutting as necessary so the parts line up if it's tiled. The labyrinth should come right up to the edge of the canvas. Glue the clothesline or twine to all of the lines, and I usually make a stream of glue on the line, then place the clothesline or twine on the glue. You want to circle until you come to an end point and then cut the string off. Leave a little space at the end of each of these points at the turns where you'll paint a flower. The string will create a raised corridor for your finger, so try to keep your path even. Okay, so you'll also notice you'll need to cut some short pieces to create the rounded part at the turns. So what I usually do is put the long pieces on, and then I cut the small pieces uniformly and paste them on to finish the labyrinth. The third step is to Modge Podge newspaper strips over the string and mold it to fit snugly. This is kind of messy. Remember to dilute your Modge Podge with 2 parts water to 1 part Modge Podge. About a half a cup of Modge Podge will be more enough with 1 cup of water for this project. Soak the strips in the mixture briefly and then mold them over the string. You can also cut a few pieces, maybe 2 by 1 inch and maybe some 4 by 1 inch, or you can just do it all uniformly. The smaller pieces sometimes help for the difficult areas. Now you want to cover the entire labyrinth, including the edges, and I usually put the labyrinth up on a bowl so that I can go around the edges without having the Modge Podge stick to the table. So you can just put a bowl under the center of the labyrinth, and that works really well. This is the trickiest part of making this labyrinth. So just keep smoothing the paper and try to keep the surface as flat as possible between the row of strings where you'll later walk your finger. And that's especially important where the edges of the newspaper are. Eventually your labyrinth should look something like this. While it's still wet, you can continue to sculpt it and make sure the places for your finger to walk are smooth. You know, what I like to do is start at the entrance to the labyrinth and move my finger around the path of the labyrinth. Now let it dry. That's the easiest part. Probably within a day it should be very dry. Depends a little bit on the humidity. Some days it may dry quicker, other days it may take a couple days. When it's completely dry, paint it with gel medium, which will prepare the surface for painting and just seal the Modge Podge. This goes on as a thick paste, and you can see there in the top right hand corner, it looks rather white, but it will dry clear, so don't worry about that. Now you're ready to start painting. So the first thing I do is paint the surface of the labyrinth, and I usually paint that white or off-white. Sometimes you can paint it other colors too, it's up to you, but if you're going to do the Living Vine Labyrinth, you want it to be a light color to offset the color of the vines. And then you can do whatever color you want for the 4 corners, and again go around the edges of the canvas to complete that. I have been painting my labyrinths off-white and then dark blue around the corners to represent the oceans and also the heavens. And this one on the right is my personal one, and that was the first one I did, and I painted it brown around the corners to represent the earth. And you don't have to worry too much about the edge around the circumference of the labyrinth because you'll be painting that green, so where the light color meets the darker color, it's okay even to leave a little bit of that without paint. Okay, the next step will be to paint the green vines. If you look at the labyrinth there, you'll see that I've, again, painted green around the circumference, a thicker line, and then I've painted all the lines around the labyrinth. So this goes pretty quickly, but you want to use a small brush. And it's helpful to look at the design while you're painting it, especially sometimes the Modge Podge may not be real perfect, and you just want to try to make your lines as clear as possible. So I usually look at the other labyrinth wall, the original pattern while I'm doing this. The next step after you've painted the green lines is to paint the leaves. Now on our church labyrinth, we did the pattern that you see there on the screen. So we have 2 leaves up and then 2 leaves down. So that way, whether you're going in or out, it will still look like the leaves are going with you at least half of the time. Now, I usually have not done that on my finger labyrinth, so you don't have to do it that way. But again, you just want to take little brush strokes with a tiny paintbrush to do the leaves. Again, because you don't want to take up too much of the walking path with the leaves. The next step is to put flowers at each of the turns, and I usually do a 6-pointed flower with 3 brush strokes. show you with the Living Vine Labyrinth, we designed this to have the colors of the chakras. So they start with the purple, or the heart chakra. And so you'll see where the arrow is. As you walk in, the first 4 flowers you come to should be purple. And this is a symbol of your connection with God. So like when I pray the labyrinth, I'm thinking about my relationship with God as I start my labyrinth walk. And then after that, we'll move to the next quadrant. The next 2 flowers will be indigo, which represents the third eye chakra, which is wisdom. So as I walk the labyrinth, I'm thinking about wisdom and insight that I've had. And then as you continue to walk in the next quadrant, you will come to the light blue. And this time there are 3 flowers that should be light blue. In the chakras, light blue represents your voice chakra. And so I always think about how is God calling me to speak and my voice. As you continue to walk in the next quadrant, you'll come to 2 green flowers. These represent the heart chakra. So as I walk the labyrinth, I'm praying about love and the people in my life and people that I love and people that are difficult to love. And it just sometimes gives me a focus for my walk. Keep moving on in, and then you'll come to the yellow or gold chakras. There's 2 of them there. And the gold color, or yellow, stands for the solar plexus, which is your courage. So sometimes I'm praying to God for courage for different things. Moving on, we come to the next 3 flowers are orange. And orange represents the womb or creative chakra, and so I'm praying about my creative endeavors. And then as you continue to walk in, the last 2 flowers before you reach the center are red, which is the root chakra, which is kind of indicative of your security and the lower part of your body. In the center of the labyrinth, I also paint all 7 flowers. So I usually put a stem, and one thing you'll notice is I also put a dot in the center of each of the flowers. Now one thing you can do, I usually use brown or maybe yellow for some of the darker flowers. You can take the tip of your paintbrush, dip it in the paint, and that makes a real easy little dot in the center of the flowers. And finally, you want to paint the heart center. The Santa Rosa Labyrinth was designed with a circular area on the 4th chakra, and you can see it there circled in red. And I have been painting a star flower there to symbolize that we're made of stardust, and also that parable of starfish, so you can't save them all, but you can save one. On my personal labyrinth, I put a sunflower. I recently made a labyrinth for a friend, and she wanted the flower of her birth month, which was lilies of the valley. So just put something that's meaningful to you there. You know, on the big labyrinth we made at church, we put flowers or a plant or a candle there when we walk the labyrinth. So congratulations, your labyrinth is complete. You can find a Living Vine Labyrinth manual on the spiritualseedlings.com Awakening Index page. And here's the actual link to that. But I made a little manual for people that when I give most of my labyrinths, I make as presents. And so I gave them a manual to go along with the labyrinth that they can use, kind of give some suggestions for ways they can use it.